Nice lube. Well, hello, and welcome back to Automotive Tales. On today's episode, we are back with the Mighty Mazda. So you saw last time I serviced the car, which was a little interesting to achieve. Now it's time to continue with more of the bits I ignored from the previous challenge, sorry Martin, that really need doing to the car. So we are going to focus on the cooling system. The car has been using a little bit of coolant and it's generally down to a leaky radiator and a couple of hoses that aren't great. So we're going to try and address that. We're going to pop in a new thermostat. And we're also going to start to have a look at the suspension. So, join me in the workshop. So, this is where the problem lies. You can see, even on a dry day like today, there's a lot of moisture down the bottom of the radiator. It looks like it's had a bit of an impact down there as well. And it's damp right the way up the side here where it goes into the reservoir at the edge of the radiator. So, that is definitely toast. So, I think it's about the right time we caught this. It's not losing a lot of fluid. It's a very slow leak. But obviously it's only going to get worse. So let's get this old radiator out and get the new one in. So first job on the Mighty Mazda is to get this grill off so we can see what we are working with. And like magic, I may have already loosened it and it's away. Interestingly, it's just held on with these little push clips, which is super handy. So you can just pop it straight out, which I wish I'd known when I was cleaning the car, because you can see where I've cleaned and where I've not cleaned. Never mind. So the first job is to get this piece of trim out here, which is held by 2 screws. That doesn't come out on its own though. I think this little pipe here needs to come out, which goes into the airbox. So it's a nice little cold air feed. So to get that out, airbox has to come out, which is handy because we do actually have a new air filter for the car, so we can change that too. So disconnect what I think is a little temperature sender here. Disconnect the MAF sensor. Just a little rubber grommet around the back here, which we just pop off. A couple of star keys, we should be able to get all of the air box out, and that should give us the wiggle room to disconnect the fan and then get the radiator out. There is probably somebody screaming at the time-lapse somewhere, telling me I'm doing this wrong, but I can't figure out how that top mount there for the fan comes out underneath there, because all of this is one solid moulded assembly with no screws, no fixings. It's just a little sort of rubber mounting, and it's slotted in at the bottom. So this has to come out and go backwards and lift up to take the fan off. But I cannot fathom how it's been put in past here when it's one solid piece, because it can't lift and slide that I can fathom, because this drops up into a hole in the top of here. I'm absolutely baffled by what should be a really easy job. Why does this always happen? So it will come as no shock to you that I'm an idiot. So the little mount at the top I've shown you before have got a rubber grommet on, which compresses. Now, before I tried pulling against those and ruled that out as an option, because these little tabs appeared to be very tightly wedged under here. My assumption was that as you pulled the fan back from the radiator, it loosened those off because they've got a bit of a wedge on them, and then it would slide out the top. Turns out not to be the case. These were just really, really stuck and required a little bit of gentle persuasion. So with a little tap in the mallet, and they're completely free, and the fan just lifts out like that. Amazing. Except I've got the camera in one hand and the fan in the other hand. So this is going to be fun. Voila, the fan is out. So what is quite nice about these is there is a lovely little drain plug there. So I can take all of the old coolant out, which isn't actually that old, it's all nice and fresh, and hopefully salvage some of it and then get the new radiator in. So, back to some time lapse. So the other job we're going to do while we've got the cooling system in pieces is replace this hose and replace the thermostat that sits on this block at the bottom. So you can probably just about make out, if I zoom in, maybe a bit further, some residue from coolant on the bottom of here. Obviously it's leaking a bit now because I've just undone things, but I'm a bit concerned this hose is sort of close to end of life. You can see it's bulging a bit here. So I want to make sure the car is properly prepped, and while I've got the cooling system in pieces, makes a lot of sense. So this is coming out next, then the thermostat, and then start putting it all back together. So one of the fun things about this job is these two radiator hoses that are hidden right up here with the clip on the top one completely the wrong way around. So yeah, that's fun. So under trays off, grill out, just to try and get to a hose clamp. Ugh, I thought this was going to be an easy job. Right, we have one brand new radiator for the Mighty Mazda. So look how thin this tiniest little thing. So right, let's see if we can get this into the car. So, new radiator is in. Somebody had the great idea at Ford to make it rubber mounted top and bottom. So what you do is you push the two rubber grommets into the slots at the bottom, you push the radiator down, it compresses the little rubber grommets, pop the radiator in and let go. What a great design. Except, on this model, that bracket there for the power steering pump fouls the hose on the top of the radiator. So while that's how you're supposed to get it in, you can't, because this is completely in the way. So to get that radiator in has taken me a good 20 minutes of very carefully fettling and moving, trying not to damage it, because realistically the only way you've got to get in is put a slight twist on it, which is not ideal for a radiator. I've also made another small modification down here, which if I grab the torch, you will see the hoses going into the radiator are now on Jubilee clips, because those other clips are an absolute nightmare and were really, really difficult. I nearly took my finger off about 3 times. So these you can now get to from the front, little stainless steel Jubilee clips, perfect. I mean, it's probably never going to get changed again, but if you're the person changing this radiator in the future, you can thank me for making your life 1,000 times easier. Right, now all I've got to do is put this whole thing back together and then do the thermostat and the new top hose. All in the next sort of half an hour before I've got to go and get Mrs. Automotive Tales from the train station. So that's going to be fun. So we are slowly getting there. Fan is back in, reconnected. All the cold air feed is back in. So just going to put a new air filter in, put the air box back in and all the intake back together. And then I'm going to start on this mess down here. So this is the thermostat. So as you can see, there's a horrible gasket to scrape off there. I've left the thermostat in for now to protect the system from all that crap. So I'm going to get a gasket scraper on there, get rid of all of that before I move the thermostat. Then I've got a new thermostat to go in, a new gasket and everything else, and put all that back together. And then new hose in, and we should be cooking on gas, hopefully. So I've taken the old thermostat housing off the old pipe, and you can see the build-up of coolant on that. It's clearly been sort of weeping past that for a little while. So we're going to stick that in the sink and give that a clean. I've had a bit of a go at getting the thermostat out. However, I cannot seem to shift it. I have tried and tried, and trying desperately not to damage it just in case. But I think it might get to the point where I'm going to need to use some gentle persuasion, I think, at this point in time. So we're finally at the good bit. Got the thermostat out. It took a bit of a beating to get it out, but it did come out. I've cleaned that all up, put the thermostat housing back on with a new gasket. You can see the old air filter I took out earlier, how disgusting that is. So that definitely needed doing. And the old hose. Now this is the problem I was trying to get at. So you can see all the build-up of coolant that's gone all crusty, and it was all leaking through there and sort of hitting the top of the engine. That might be why the spark plugs are so difficult to get out, if it's been leaking out of there slowly. So we have a nice new Gates hose, and I'm going to change these horrible clips that I don't like because they're a nuisance to get at for anybody in the future, into these nice Jubilee clips. So I've got matching ones for each size. So now all's left to do is get this back on, new Jubilee clips, get the coolant back in. So this hasn't quite gone to plan. Bear with. Well, that's as far as I got on recording the cooling system rebuild because I ran out of time to go and get Mrs. Automotive Tales from the train station. So I threw the car back together. I had to use some of the original factory spring clips rather than Jubilee clips because it turned out I didn't have quite enough of the right size, and that came back to bite me. They've lost tension, I guess, over time, so they don't really clamp the hose on very well, especially to the thermostat housing, which is where it was leaking from before. So I suspect the clip might have been part of the problem as well. So I ordered some nice new proper Jubilee clips, and then had the fun task of working out how you take a spring clip off and put a Jubilee clip on without taking the hose off, so you don't have to drain all the fresh coolant back out of the system, because that would be a massive waste. So we achieved that, as you will probably see here on the video, and then that's it until we went back to the workshop to work on the lower arms. So let's go back to the workshop in the next episode. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. There's always some on a loud bike or a noisy car when you're trying to video something.